See It Sports, and this week we'll be covering the 3M Open. We'll be taking a look at the course, last year's results, some historical analysis, and building the ideal player profile, which will feed into our model and see what kind of results we get and compare that to the betting odds and see what kind of value we can find for the week. Before we get into that, we'll do our weekly review from last week like we're going to do every week. So last week at the Open, this is my first time doing a model for the Open, so it was a little challenging trying to work the live players into the model with the PGA players, but I found it was pretty successful where the live players didn't perform as well on the model, and they actually didn't perform that well overall in the actual event, so that kind of matched. With that being said, looking back, I think even though I did factor it in, I think course history factors in a little more heavily at the Open, so looking forward, we'll do that. But as you can see, we had Scheffler first in the model, and he won it. Rahm was a disappointment. Henley was my value pick of the week, and he paid me off with a top 10 there. Got some disappointing performances from Taylor and Straka. But then we have DeChambeau top 10, Goddard up a third, McIlroy tied seventh, Ben Griffin with the missed cut, and then we all know Shane Lowry with that two-stroke penalty threw his tournament off. And then Harry Hall was in top 13 after round 3, tied 13, but he just couldn't put together in the final round to make that push. So all in all, pretty good results, I think, for the Open, which is definitely, can be a difficult the majors can be difficult tournaments to model for, but I think it went pretty well. But anyways, on to the 3M Open. So the 3M Open's at the TPC Twin Cities in Blaine, Minnesota, which interestingly enough, I used to live in Blaine, Minnesota years and years ago. But as you look at the scorecard, the first thing you notice is all of that blue in the picture. Tons of water in this course. So it's a par 71, 7,468 yards. We're looking at bent grass greens this week. We have 72 sand bunkers and 27 water hazards in play on 15 holes. Water in play on 15 holes is definitely a big key for this tournament. All right, so let's take a look back at last year's results, leaderboard, and see how these players handled this course. So last year, our leaderboard is a good mix of distance, iron players, some putters. It's a good mix, but the core, as we'll see here shortly, of what kind of held this group together, pushed this group up, is above average to really good iron play. And then you supplement that with some distance or some putting, and they were able to come up with top 10s this week. So let's go ahead and take a look at the consistent metrics that we can pull from the top 10 to plug into our player profile for our model. So the key stat, this from last year's tournament, strokes gained approach. The top 10 averaged just over 1 stroke gain, with Matt Kuchar leading away with plus 2.513 on his way to a tie for third place. The second most important stat, or consistent stat, was strokes gained putting at 0.8 of a stroke gain on average by the top 10, and Grazerman leading away with plus 1.849 on his way to a second place. And then strokes gained off the tee just over a half a stroke for the top 10 averaged, where Vegas, he had plus 2.326 strokes gained in ball striking, which is off the tee and approach combined. And then he combined that with a really good putting week for himself to turn that into a win. And then, as we'll see, strokes gained around the green, very minimal compared to the other stats, and Vegas himself actually had a small negative in the that category, but would still be able to pull off the win. So, what do all these stats say for our player profile and who we're looking for this week? The first two are pretty obvious here. We have this strokes gained approach, where you have to have solid to really good iron play to compete in this event. And then you want to be able to putt the ball a bit to gain strokes on the rest of the field. Now, if I was more of a strokes gained purist, I would just keep going with off the tee and around the green, weight them accordingly, you know what I mean, and see what it spits out for players. And that might work pretty well, but when I'm doing a model, I am trying to tell a story of the course. Really address those key characteristics of the course. So instead of just going straight going off the tee, we're going to use a couple of statistics of off the tee that'll help us tell a little bit more what player will do better at this event, at least in my mind. So one of the key metrics in this course at TP's Twin Cities is its par fives. I don't have the graphic for it, but the top 10 gained a significant amount of strokes in par fives. Not as much in par fours and literally nothing in par threes. So par fives are kind of where you make your hay on this course a little bit, or can actually make, push you up and make that difference. So we're going with driving distance average as our third metric to cover the strokes gained on par fives. And then now with our player profile, we're starting to get a nice matrix going here where we have, iron play, putting, but we're kind of countering that with a more distance player. So starting to get the matrix going. And so if we go back to earlier what we were saying when we were looking at the course, the key characteristic of the course is the water. So one of the key things the players will need to do this week to win is stay out of the water. And we could go we could go with fairway percentage. That's pretty good. Saying how accurate you are hitting the fairways, but I think we can do just a little bit better than that. So instead of fairway percentage, I want someone who, when they miss, they don't miss bad. They have good misses or a good drive percentage. So what good drive percentage is the percent of times you hit the fairway, so it's using fairway percentage, but then it's adding on when you don't hit the fairway every time you're able to hit a green in regulation or fringe in regulation. So what it's trying to say is when you hit the fairway, but when you don't hit the fairway, you miss in a way where you're still be able to get your next shot, your approach shot, onto the green or close to the green. So what that says to me, when you miss, you don't miss by much, or your misses are good, or your misses are not going to go into the water. So good drive percentage is the final of the four stats we'll be using this week in key to telling the story of the water hazards on this course. And then finally, we'll round that out with current form and course history. Current form, last four tournaments, then course history we're using the last 4 years. Just a quick note on course history, a pattern that I've noticed. Going back to 2020, Tony Finau tied for third. He won it 2 years later in 22. Go on to 2021, Jonathan Vegas tied for second. Move forward 3 years later to last year, he wins it. 2022, when Tony Finau was winning the event, Lee Hodges was getting a top 16, and then Hodges won it the next year in 23. So our last three winners all had previous success the year before, 2 years before in the event, showing that course history does matter on this course, at least to me. There's a pattern being developed. So let's take a look at the results. So we ended up having two main tiers with a couple of guys working into this middle tier that, just kind of in their own little world there. But we ended up with the top 10. And just do a little bit of honorable mention here. We had 4 players grouped together in the 430s. They didn't quite make the list. And they were literally 4 points from each other, just right in a row. We have Taylor Pendrith, Kevin Roy, Keith Mitchell, and Thorbjørn Olsen. They all rated closely in iron play and closely in good drive percentage, but they make their hay in different ways, where Pendrith and Mitchell are both kind of bombers and they're top in driving distance, whereas Thorbjørn Olsen's the putter of the group. He has by far the best putting of the group, and Kevin Roy has been in the best form of the group. So just wanted to throw that out there for anybody who is interested in those players that week. They didn't quite make the model, but they did perform pretty strongly. So on to our contenders, our top 10 here. So number 10 and number 9, I grouped these guys together because they're 1 point off, but they could not be more different players. Different betting odds and possibly different career trajectories. Sami Välimäki did well on the list because of the 2 primary statistics. He is good with his irons and he is a great putter, but form, good drive percentage is average, and then distance is poor for him, whereas Kiskadrup is the complete opposite, where 101st in iron play, so way down there, barely top 100 in putting, but his form has been amazing, his good drive percentage is amazing, and he leads in driving average percentage. Driving distance average, excuse me. So 2 different players, just really close in the model. And the next 2 grouped together, they actually tied for 7th there with a score of 400, Smalley and Grillo. And those 2 are actually somewhat similar players in the sense that Grillo is higher on the iron part, playing with his irons and approach, but Smalley is a little better in every other statistic, slightly, but then Grillo made up ground with course history because he's performed well over here the last 4 years, and we'll talk about that a little bit more here. And then we have our middlemen, which were two really different ones for me. So Lee Hodges, not much as a surprise. Great iron play, not as good of a putter, form but good at the other stats, and he won here 2 years ago, so obviously he's comfortable here and his game translates here. Whereas Victor Perez, I was surprised to see top 25 in iron play, top 15 putting, form's been terrible, top 10 in drive percentage, and he's still top 100 in distance, even though that's not his strong suit. Add that up for a pretty reasonable score. He just has not been showing well at any tournament. So apparently he's a part-time player right now and can't put together 4 solid rounds. But on to our top 4 anyways. We got Andrew Putnam at a 344. He is a good iron player, great putter. He's in great form, awesome good drive percentage, and he is super happy that Brian Campbell exists so no one else talks about how short he drives the ball and they only talk about how Campbell can't drive the ball. Yeah, so that's basically Andrew Putnam right there. And then we got Akshay Bhatia. Great iron player, great putter. He's not been in great form. He has good accuracy, good drive percentage, and average power. This definitely could be a week that he does put things together. We just haven't seen it recently. And then we have good old Jake Knapp, number 2 at 327 points. Knapp, to me, is the Grazerman of last year's event, where he's going to win it with distance and putting. His iron play is just above average. He's top-notch in putting at 12th. The form has been amazing lately. His good drive percentage is a little worrisome, just over 100, but then he's got that power. He's got that distance. So as long as Knapp's good drive percentage, like if he can stay out of that water, he's going to have a real good shot this week to pull a Grazerman like he did last year. And the number 1 player of the model this week, Maverick McNeely. Not much of a surprise. He's playing great lately. He scores well, like good to great in every category. 43rd in iron plays. He's 31st in putting. Form's been great. Drive percentage 71st. He's top 60 in distance, so he's not the longest, but he's got good distance, so he's got that great overall game to attack this course. And you add on that the course history he's had, where last year that tied for 3rd, and then he had a top 20 before then. So let's go ahead and compare our model results to the betting odds and see what kind of values we can find this week. So on the left, we have our players listed from top to bottom, from highest to lowest score, and then their betting odds on DraftKings as of, what would that be, 7/21, whatever time of day it was, on the right here. And so we're just going to be taking a look at the to win right now. So McNeely is priced to win at, 2,000. And we got Knapp at 4, and Bhatia also at 4, and then rounding out the favorites, Putnam at plus 7,000. Perez at plus 10, Hodges at plus 7. Feels a little disrespectful for a previous winner, but he has not been in form. And then in the contenders, Smalley's plus 6,000, Grillo plus 5,000, Goddard plus 1,800, and Valimaki plus 15,000. Yeah, definitely at the different ends of the spectrum when it comes to betting odds. So I ended up narrowing it down to 4 players that I'll be betting on this week, and I eliminated them, the other 6 players, for varying reasons. The first 2 I eliminated because they're odds. Maverick McNeely and Chris Goddard, both been playing great, both scored great in the model, but they're both coming back from the Open Championship after making the cut, trying to make the change to the time zones, get ready for the tournament, and I just think it's too much of a chance for those odds to take, at least for me. So the first 2 I eliminated were Goddard and McNeely just because of odds. And then the other 4 that I just wasn't that comfortable because of their form lately. They just have not had any top finishes. They haven't shown anything. They showed the ability, and they might spike it this week. But until I see a little more from these 4 players, I think I'm just going to stay away for this week. And those other 4 players will be out of the contenders, Alex Smalley and Sammy Valimaki. I'll be fading Victor Perez out of the middlemen, and then Akshay Bhatia out of the favorites category. And so that leaves me with my 4 players of Knapp, Putman, Hodges, and Grillo that I'll be betting on this week. And so let's take a look at the way I see it. So the way I see it, my value pick of the week, Andrew Putnam at plus 7,000. He ranked 4th in the model. His form has been great the last 5 tournaments with the T6, T8, and T11. In between the T8 and T11, he had a withdrawal and a missed cut, which does not concern me because often when golfers have to withdraw, they don't do great in the next event because either they're not healed up all the way or hadn't had the time to practice and stay in form. But coming back with the T11 makes me feel like he's still doing great. And then he also has great history at this course with the T19 and a T11 in the last 3 years. So I think he is poised to make a good run at this tournament this year. And then so the other 3 best bets to win this week, we got Jake Knapp at plus 4,000. His is form-based. He has 3 straight top 25s with a top tied for 4th mixed in there. So he has been on fire lately. And then we got Lee Hodges at plus 7,000. And like I said, this is a history one where he's had the win in a T16, so he's obviously comfortable at this course. And I'm hoping this will play kind of like a homecoming for him, and his confidence levels will boost up this week. And then finally, Grillo at plus 5,000. I could not deny his history. From 21 to 24, he's gone T2, T3, T10, T24. And then just recently, he had a playoff loss to Brian Campbell in the John Deere Classic. So I just want to add that in there because it shows within the last month, Grillo almost won a tournament. So the form is still there, and he still has that chance to win a tournament. And you can combine that with his course history. It makes me feel really, really good about his chances. So let's take a look at the final wagers and how I see it for this week. So we got Andrew Putnam in red here because he is my value pick of the week, and I usually put a little more sauce on those. But as we said, we got him for the win, the top 20 and first round leader. Andrew Putnam is number 4 in overall first round scoring in the PGA. He's put up a handful of 64s this year. Just recently at the Rocket Classic, he put up a -8, which tied the course record. That got lost in the wash because Minwoo Lee broke it with a -9. Potgeier and Roy broke it later that day with a -10. And then Jake Knapp, our guy we'll see here on the list, broke it actually in the second round, but with a -11 to break the course record. So Putnam is able to put up high scores in the first round, or low scores in the first round. And so then we're going to Lee Hodges with his plus 7,000, and he's won here before, so we'll take him for a win, a top 20, and also the first round lead. Lee Hodges is number 5 in overall first round scoring, put up some low scores this year, but when he won the tournament 2 years ago, he put up a first round 63, and I'm hoping he can do that again. And then we got Grillo. We got him at plus 5,000 for a win and backing that up with a top 10 because of his performances here. And then finally, Jake Knapp at plus 4,000. We have him for a win, a top 10, and also a first round leader at plus 5,000. Knapp is number 10 in overall first round scoring. He just moved up 2 spots this last week, so he is hot. Within the last 4 tournaments, if you look at the first and second round of the last 4 tournaments, he's put up 3 rounds, 64 or less. He's put up 64, 63, and he put up that 61 at the Rocket Classic. It was in the second round, but it shows you he can go low and early and possibly make that the first round. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the way I see the 3M Open this week. If you find any value in the content or you enjoyed it all, go ahead and just give it a like. If you'd like, go ahead and subscribe. We'll be putting out more videos every week. If you enjoy the lighter side of golf, I've been messing around with YouTube Shorts and making some golf memes, so if you want to check that out. But thank you for joining me. I hope you all have a great day. Enjoy the tournament this weekend, and that is the way I see it.